Hey y'all, it is Kayla from Tactical Response here with Reed, who is a friend of mine that is a police officer. And with everything that has happened and going on, like, I just kind of wanted to talk to you, talk it out. And there's kind of been a movement that I've seen where people are becoming less friendly towards police officers. And I just kind of want to talk through all that.
Yeah.
Get a police officer perspective.
Yes. You can have, yeah, it's my perspective only. It's not representing
Right.
anything.
A police officer, not the police officer's
Nope,
perspective.
I'm just
a
like
police officer's
a dude.
perspective.
Yeah.
So one of the things, like, most everybody knows that growing up, my dad was a cop. And the deal with that, and me and you were discussing this a little bit yesterday, is I was always around, like, solid, good dudes because they were friends of my dad. And I, like, just being completely honest, I feel like I look at cops through rose-colored glasses because it's like close to my heart.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. I mean, everybody's opinion is formed by their experiences.
Right.
So if you've got a ton of good experiences, it makes sense that is going to be kind of your opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
And then working at the jail, my opinion shifted a little bit.
Yes. Yes. So, just like every group of people, including like the group that is all humans, there's like some like super studs, like people that are like just amazing and do really cool stuff, and like things that you didn't even think of or think were capable. And then there's like some people that are really good, solid, dependable people. And then there's like a lot of like medium-ish people. That's like the most of them. And then there's some people that like, if you never saw again, like you'd be happy about that.
Yeah. And that was something that my dad would say, and it exists in every profession, was the Heraclitus quote.
Yes.
The out of every 100, like 10 shouldn't even be there. And those are the douchebags. Those are the ones that make the news. And that's in any profession. Like, those are the douchebag cops. Those are the douchebag nurses. Those are the douchebag training instructors. Like,
yes.
the ones who, like, really should not have ever been in that profession from the start.
Yeah. And I might go so far as to say, like, they just might not be good people.
Right.
Like,
I don't think they are.
Like, they don't have a good character.
Right. And that, unfortunately, that because it is out of character for what you would expect, especially of police officers, nurses, like people who their entire job is to help others.
Yes.
Like, I think that's why it garners so much media attention.
It's a deviation from the standard that is a bigger deviation than what people expect.
Mm-hmm.
So, people might expect, if they hire, a plumber, like, hey, this guy might be a little, like, dodgy, right?
Yeah. Looking at you, Martin.
to use the Jay Gibson, but they don't expect that from somebody that is in a position of authority.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's not limited to police officers, but that is the like picture of authority when people say it. Like, that is the picture that goes in your mind.
Right.
Is like authority figure because they got the badge and the patch. And
well, I remember back before COVID, before we were all nurses were hailed as heroes.
yes,
There were things going around like, I don't know if you watched the thing that it was like a little news clip, and it was talking about how rural nurses just sit around and play cards all day. And a friend of mine at the facility that she worked at for Nurses Week that week, they gave them all playing cards.
It's like they look up from their card game. They're like, how dare they?
Yeah. So, like, every profession, especially those helper ones, like helpers and then those in authority. And when you're in the hospital, it kind of does work the same way. Like, your nurse is in charge of stuff. Your doctor's in charge of stuff. So, like those positions, they always make a bigger impact when something bad happens from them. And then you've got like the 80 who are merely targets, or those who like they show up and they do like what's required of them.
Sometimes.
Most of the time.
Sometimes. Those are the...
Like they meet minimum standards.
Those are the people that may not necessarily be good or bad. They're
just there.
They're just there. They're filling a spot. Sometimes they do good things. Sometimes they do not so good things. But in general, they're not destroying the organization or the mission, but they're not really furthering it either.
Right. And then the nines and ones. And that is typically the police officers that I was around. And when I hear all of these horror stories where people are jumping to like what they think happened, like I have to think about the police officers that I know, like J-Law, one of my favorite humans on the planet, and he's a cop. Like you, another one of my favorite humans. Like I have so many friends that I love and care about deeply, and that's who I think of when I think of cops. So it's easier for me to maybe give the benefit of the doubt than it would be for the average person who was around any of the other 90%. And something that, again, that we discussed yesterday, like the whole thin blue line, like supporting police officers, what it means to me is that the officer gets the benefit of the doubt until all the facts are out. It doesn't offer a free pass for bad behavior. It doesn't offer like I'm going to look the other way and pretend that you're still a good person. It's, hey, like those situations that you guys end up in are like we've all been through, like we have been through force on force. Like those situations are not as cut and dry as it appears from the Monday morning quarterback's position.
Yes.
So
there's a reason that the way use of force is judged is based on a reasonable officer or a reasonable person in that same scenario, only knowing the facts that they knew at that time.
Right.
They're not judged based on hindsight.
No.
Because we don't have nobody, police officer or a average citizen does not have the benefit of hindsight.
Well, and then even
which is something that people have on the internet.
Right. But even looking at it, like when you have all of the facts out, like when it's rolled out and everything is laid out in front of you, sometimes the call is still hard to make on what was the right choice. And then you take even a further step back looking at the big picture, and you're like, okay, so I had all of the facts and information, and I'm also sitting here thinking rationally right now. I don't have the effects of adrenaline. I don't have the fear running through me. I can hear because my heartbeat's not overriding everything else in my ears. So like before people make those kind of judgments, I really do think that you should come take a force on force class so that you can see how different it really is.
But then those people might have to admit that they like don't know everything.
Yeah. So what are the qualities of a good police officer?
So if I was like building my dream
build a cop,
yeah, like they need to, he or she, they need to be able to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is an intangible skill that like we kind of need to make tangible almost. So the job is that's like the biggest tool that you have. Like use that more than your car, more than anything on your belt. Like they need to be able to talk to people in a way that can like de-escalate, resolve conflicts, can essentially they need to be able to use like the verbal judo. It's a terrible cliche, but I don't have
cliches exist for a
I
reason.
don't have another term for it. So, but they need to be able to communicate well. So, an example of that is like if I stop you and I'm like, hello, ma'am, I'm Officer such and such with such and such police department, and do you know why I stopped you today? And you say, no. And I say, I stopped you because of this. May I have your license and registration, please?
Side note, why do you ask? Like, do you know why I stopped you?
Sometimes people are like, oh, it's because I have warrants. And then I'm like,
Okay.
You're right. Go ahead and step out of the car.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know. I was just like, I wonder, like you already know. Is this a trick question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, it is a trick question.
It can. Yeah.
It can be.
It can be a trick question. A policy that is common in police departments is to inform the person why you're stopping them. And that like spiel that kind of gets me there. But the point of me bringing this example up is like this is a way that like I'm gonna attempt to connect with you a little bit. Like, hey, this is who I am. I'm not trying to hide who I am, and this is who I work for. This is where I work. And additionally, somebody may have had huge troubles with X police department, and like I'm kind of reminding them, hey, we're Y police department. Like, this isn't, just because a cop was
That ain't us.
Rude to you last week does not mean that's how this is going to go. And then basically, polite and professional. I'm not lecturing. So like that's kind of, it's a may seem like a small example, but it's not like aggressive in any way. Like if the conversation is going to become aggressive, it's not going to be because of what I said. Like that's on the other person. And if they want to do that, like if you want to talk shit to the cops, like that's your right. Like, you can do that. Usually I don't think it's a great idea, but like you could do it.
Yeah. You like both.
It's not nice.
No, it's not. It really isn't.
Just be nice.
They're
Just be
people
nice.
too.
So, but I try to, and it works on an investigative level too, but I try to be kind of officer friendly, like from the jump, like, hey, like it's a positive energy. It's a smile.
Yeah, you know they're already not happy with the interaction. Like you messed up their day a little bit. They messed up their day a little bit.
Nobody likes being inconvenienced.
Right.
Nobody likes to be scared.
Right.
And nobody likes to be held accountable for their actions. That is a human thing that like people who are police officers, have been police officers, like nurses, whatever. That is true for every human.
Yes.
And it is like, it wasn't long ago that like if a marked vehicle got behind me that I would be like, oh snap. And not that I had necessarily done anything, but it can be intimidating, and I realize that. And that's another reason for that little spiel is like, if you're feeling scared, like hopefully like me speaking to you in a like kind professional manner is going to like, I'm trying to send the message, like, you don't need to be scared.
Yeah, ease some of that up.
Yes.
Like, I want to be the cop that you want to show up to your emergency, not the cop that you're afraid to show up to your emergency.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Number one thing that's required is the like interpersonal communication skills.
Yes. Well, maybe not number one, but like it's up in the top somewhere.
It's in the top 3. Like, because I have a different number one answer, but mine's a little bit more conducive to my own belief system.
Sure.
And that is a profound understanding of the United States Constitution.
So I think I may have made an error in that I kind of assumed that's a given.
You absolutely made an error.
Yeah.
Assuming that that's a given.
Like, I am lucky enough to have experienced a department in which the culture of that department is like very it stresses the importance of people's rights.
It's wonderful to hear.
Yes.
As somebody who doesn't really play an active role in that anymore, that there are still departments out there, especially in today's day and age, where like it feels as if it is becoming less and less important to respect people's rights if you can make people safer.
Yes. So there is that's extremely important, and like it's foundational. It even can drive it, and by foundational I mean like the mindset, tactics, skill, and gear are built on that foundation. So and like a silly example of this is like case law may limit our tactics, even though the best tactic is X, like for mission accomplishment and keeping all the good people safe. We can't do that.
Yeah, but and I've mentioned this before, like on completely unrelated topics. Whenever you are attempting to like pass a law or make your considerations or like form a belief system, even, you can't look at it as the good of the whole. Because not if you want to stay true to American standards, which is individual freedom is of the utmost importance. And it's really difficult to sit there and understand like why things are having to be done a certain way. But it's done that way. Like, why can't they just go in? Like we had the Holly Bobo case here. She was a nursing student that lived one county over, and she ended up being murdered. And during the trial, I'm sitting there like, holy crap, they haven't proved anything. Like it was a debacle. And people were upset with like the jury and stuff like that. And it's like, guys, you've got to be held to a standard for a reason. And that is why within the criminal justice system, it is supposed to be like innocent until proven guilty
beyond
reasonable doubt.
Yes.
So
it's an extremely high standard.
Yeah. So having to give up some of the safeties, like, and I put that in quotes because, like, unless you can carry a cop on your back at all times, you're not really very safe. And even then, you're not safe from everything. But having to give up some of those safeties to ensure that rights are upheld is worth it.
Yes. It's everybody like kind of knows what shady people look like and do and say. Like if you come across somebody and they're being dodgy,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, that person probably is up to no good.
So anytime my dad pulled somebody over and they started smoking a cigarette, he was like, they got warrants.
That is what we would call
A clue.
Yes, a clue and / or a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Another one is when they say, I already know I'm going to jail.
Yeah.
Like, they're telling you that they are doing something that would make them go to jail.
Right.
You just haven't found it yet, but they know it.
Yeah.
So, it happens all the time where you come across these people that like, and for police officers, especially those that are more proactive, we deal with these people constantly, like multiple times a day, every single day, like for years and years and years. Like, I mean, I think for like full retirement, I got to do like 27.
Yeah.
So it's a long time. So you get like super good at honing in at like somebody being shady, and then and even being able to articulate what it is that they are doing that makes you suspicious.
Well,
so but and I say that to say this is like, you got somebody you're like 100% sure like they have done, are doing, there's something in the car, but like if you do not possess like the legal standards to further that investigation,
you gotta
like
stop.
here's your license back, and here's a ticket or not a ticket, and have a nice day. Like that it's set up that way. Like it's important for that to happen.
Yes. Well, because like if you are a nurse, at some point, I don't even have to ask somebody what's going on before I start seeing symptoms of whatever disease they have.
Yes.
So if I walk into a room and I see somebody who's kind of breathing heavy, we call it tripoding, where they're like leaned over, hands on their knees, and they're barrel chested, I don't have to say one word to them before I know, hey, that person has COPD. And I can articulate,
Yes.
well, it's this, and this is what did it. But if you walked into a room and you saw somebody sitting like that, that's not going to be what pops into your head.
Yeah.
So I think like understanding that as long as you can articulate the suspicion and it's valid, then like you're not really giving up a whole lot. Like that's what the standard you want people held to.
Yes. So and I, this isn't like a case law podcast or like this is how we do an investigation, but it is important to articulate that, and that comes with experience.
Mm-hmm. So experience in like knowing and understanding that those needs must be met is part of being a good cop. Like we're still building the perfect cop here.
100%. So like understanding the legal standards, like if someone doesn't understand what they need to restrain somebody's freedom,
mm-hmm.
to detain, arrest, search, things like that, like they should never get out the door of the academy.
Right.
Like that is like the early thing. The experience comes in when like you let a ton of people go because you didn't know what you could do.
Yeah.
So
so do you think that it would make for overall better police officers if you took new cops and paired them up with older good cops?
Definitely. And
like for an extended period of time.
So yes, it already happens. It's, as to my knowledge, and I don't know the certifications of every state
mm-hmm.
or jurisdiction around the country, but usually it's called something like field training officer. So
Okay.
when a recruit graduates the academy and they get sworn in, their training is not over. So usually I shouldn't say usually because some states are super weird. But one of the typical ways that it happens is the academy is like around 6 months, and then the field training is around like 4 to 6 months. So essentially you're riding with a senior officer who is both teaching and evaluating you. And there's, a probationary period, et cetera, et cetera. And you have to meet standards set by the state to pass. So you could graduate the academy and go out there and be a probationary cop for a little while, and then theoretically you could not pass field training. And it has happened. I've seen it happen. Unfortunately, because we work for the public sector, things don't always work the way they should work.
Right.
But
So we've got a deep understanding of the United States Constitution, interpersonal communication skills, experience and critical thinking skills to where you can navigate that experience to get to the correct outcome.
So that's going to lead me into my next one.
Okay.
Is, an abundance of common sense.
And unfortunately, common sense ain't really that common.
Yes, it's misnamed, as we all know. But the problems that we are called to solve generally are not. It's not rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
So just an abundance of common sense, and then that would lead me into my next. So my most important three would be the ability to make good decisions under pressure.
And I think that because one of the things that I was going to bring up was just solid moral fiber, and that plays into that.
Yes.
You have to be a good person to be successful and good at your job in any industry where you're supposed to be a helper.
Yeah. I think it is important that it's easy to become cynical.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. God, yes.
Yes. Even if someone is cynical, I think it's important for that person to always remind yourself that of how it is for the victim
Mm-hmm.
of a crime, a situation, things like that. And also things become so common because we deal with it all the time that
Mm-hmm.
what is baseline normal for a police officer, especially in a metropolitan area, is going to be wildly not common for
anybody else.
Yes, for anybody else.
Yeah.
I made a comment at an alumni weekend one time. Somebody asked me a question about something, and I told them an example of, I think the question was something along the lines of what is going to if I get in a shooting, what is going to happen afterward? And kind of we talked about that, and of course, they were an alum, so they knew a lot.
Yep.
Because that's covered in Fighting Pistol. The example I gave was a case where I got called for a stabbing.
Mm-hmm.
And showed up, and it was real weird. But we took the guy into custody, and I was able to figure out pretty quick that this was not a stabbing. So basically the way I communicated this to them was like, yeah, I mean, the guy had to sit in handcuffs, you know, in the back of my car for a couple hours, but like he got right out. It wasn't a big deal. And like to them, that is a huge deal. Like,
Yeah.
so that was like, to them, that was like the worst possible scenario that they could even imagine almost. So like reminding myself, and I think it, you know, people should remind themselves,
we're not
like,
normal.
this is not a normal thing.
No, so you were talking about like the cynical stuff, and one of the like weirdest moments for me in nursing was eating lunch less than 5 minutes after I had just been doing chest compressions.
Yep.
And it was sitting there, and I remember thinking, like, as I'm doing chest compressions, you kind of, like, it was not my first time. And so you're kind of having a little bit of an out-of-body experience, because if you've never done CPR, it's exhausting. Like, every time I've had to do it, I felt like I was hit by a Mack truck the next day. But
you guys got to do it for a long time.
yeah.
I only have to do it till like the big red truck comes.
Well, we were waiting on the ambulance. This was while I was at the jail. We were waiting on
okay.
the ambulance, and they took an exceptionally long time to get there.
Yes.
But like, I remember while I am doing CPR, I'm like, fuck, this is going to make me late for my lunch break. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person, like, for thinking that. But when it is something that you compartmentalize, because you do not survive in jobs where you see the worst part of people's lives without being able to compartmentalize at least a little bit. At least a little bit. But it was such an odd feeling for me, and like I hadn't been in nursing for a super long amount of time at that point, but long enough to know, like, okay, that was like intrusive thought kind of thing. Like, reset, I still care about these people. Like, I still pumped on his chest until EMS showed up, and didn't think anything about, like, okay, I'm not actually mad. It was just like, fuck, this is gonna mess up my day. And like, it's really weird to most people to hear, like, you're pumping on a dude's chest and you're worried about your day. But it's like, well, that mean, yeah, I'm exhausted. Like, all this stuff is going on, but I was still able to do my job well.
Yes.
And I was told, like, I was talking to, like, I absolutely adored two of the nurses that I worked with. Like, they helped me become the nurse that I am. And I was talking to them, and I told them that, and they kind of giggled at me, and they said, but if it ever gets to a point where you become resentful, you need to get out. And like, I think it's the same for police officers. Like, it's difficult to not be cynical when you see the same people. Because I had a different experience as a nurse working as a correctional nurse, because I got both. I got the law enforcement side and the nurse side.
Yep.
So you're seeing these same people in and out all the time, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why can't you just do better? And it's easy to get cynical when that is what you spend most of your time seeing, is people who won't help themselves.
I think I would go so far as to say it's impossible not to be cynical.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, you need to be self-aware enough to realize that.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to, like, balance that.
So one of my tricks,
yes,
whenever I was working at the jail to help keep all of that in perspective, was that I would have real conversations with the inmates while they were in the nurse's office. Like, I figured out, like, okay, who do I want to be, like, to these people? And this is a jail, not a prison. These people have not been convicted for the most part. Like, everybody else in here is this person who has some sort of control over them or something. So what do I want to be to them? And I would have conversations and ask them about their lives and stuff. And it it helped me significantly get rid of any leftover cynicism from all of the bad shit when, like, there was an inmate, and I was like, okay, because my thing, I used humor for everything. It gave the inmates an out. Like, you weren't being disrespected if everybody kind of laughed it off. You got to laugh it off. I got to laugh it off. But you knew it was something I needed you to fix. And I was like, come on, okay. I get heroin. Like, I see the progression from, like, pain pills to heroin. I get marijuana. Like, it's supposed to be relaxing. Nobody dies from overdoses. Like, ecstasy is supposed to be this, like, beautiful thing. Like, I understand all of these other drugs. Why meth? Like, why meth? And he looked at me, and like, our typical banter, and it was my typical banter with almost all of them, was like lighthearted. Like, you are already, like, you don't have your freedom. You don't get to talk to your family. You don't get to talk to your friends. And part of my job as a nurse is making sure that you stay mentally healthy enough to not want to kill yourself while you're in here. And the dark humor nurse in me just wanted to say, because that leaves me with more paperwork. That's not why I did it, though. Like, it was like, you really want them to get better. Like, that is part of what you put people away for. Like, yeah, it's a punishment, but you're looking for them to improve while they're in there. And so I asked him, like, why meth? And he got really serious. And he was just like, Miss Kayla, the first time I did meth, I was 13 years old. And I was like, what? And he said, my mama needed somebody to get high with. And it stopped me in my tracks. Like, and that conversation changed my life and my opinions. And it got rid of so much cynicism. Just that one conversation. And I think that as a police officer, you have to be able to understand the human factor in how they got there. Like, because even in the criminals, the whole, like, 10% shouldn't even be there.
It's the amount of people who are able to take corrective action.
Mm-hmm.
Like, bravo. That's super impressive. A lot of people who I would deal with would come from, like, really, really bad like, beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, people say that all the time. Like, it's almost a throwaway.
Yeah.
But, like, their life growing up is, like, that is not like anything I have ever experienced.
Right. I couldn't imagine my mother asking me to do something like meth with her when I am in my primitive, like, learning who to be still years.
Yeah. It's hard. It would be hard for anyone, if that's all they knew,
mm-hmm.
To do anything else.
So I'm hearing that another good quality is being able to humanize everyone.
Yes.
Like,
it does not excuse.
Right. It doesn't excuse. Does not excuse what they're doing. But understanding the why kind of helps you keep them as a human.
Yes.
Like, there is a reason there are, like, code of ethics in war. There are reasons that, like, there is rules for how you treat people in the prison system. They are still, most of
yes.
them are still human beings. We all know the category I'm talking about, okay? So they need to be honorable. They need to have a deep understanding of the Constitution.
You have to be honest.
Yeah. Interpersonal communication skills.
I know of no other job, like, in the world
mm-hmm.
that requires you to be more honest than law enforcement.
Right.
Because your entire job relies on your ability to testify.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not honest, then that you can't do it.
So I think that all of those things, those are the same character traits that I see in the police officers that are in my life.
I think people that are willing to that take it seriously enough to acquire training outside of what is provided. That is a filter that is skimming off the very top.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of super good dudes out there that aren't willing to do that, but like the ones that will,
they are the nines and ones.
There's a very high chance that they are in that category, I think.
Oh, for sure. And like I said, rose-colored glasses, because that's all I've ever really been exposed to before I started working in a corrections job.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, like, that one, it helped me to like communicate with the officers who were there, like see things from their point of view and like understand why they did it, and learning the difference in like just being able to look at somebody and see how they interact with another person, knowing whether or not they're a good cop.
Yeah.
Like,
it's and you know, everybody's got bad days.
Yeah.
And everybody, you know, says things, I probably shouldn't have done that. Like, one of the things I kind of used to like laugh at internally is kind of like the bumpers on a bowling lane.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, sometimes I would deal with somebody and like be way too forgiving, like give warnings when like I really shouldn't, things like that. And then other times, like, I might put a charge on somebody, and then like I think about it later, and I'm like, I don't know if they really needed that charge. But like, that is kind of like having the self-awareness to realize that, I think, is the good thing.
So what happened?
No person is ever going to make the best, and it's, when I said I don't need to put a charge on them, I mean like they did it.
Yeah. But it's like if you get pulled over for speeding and then like the person doesn't have the paper copy of their proof of insurance, like they just have the phone copy. Like, okay, I can also write them a ticket for that. But is it like, should I? Just because you can doesn't mean you should, kind of thing.
Yes. And I think
officer discretion exists for a reason.
I think that just because you can doesn't mean you should thing. I think that is like one of the it may not be in like the top part of the triangle,
Mm-hmm.
but it might be in the next part. Like, understand, and that again comes with experience. Like, when you come out of the academy, like, they don't, like, a class in the academy is not like, hey, this guy doesn't really need a ticket.
Right.
They don't teach you that.
Yeah.
So you have to like, usually police officers come out of the academy and they're like, they taught me how to write tickets. Like,
I should write tickets.
I'm gonna do that.
My dad said every single ticket he wrote was earned. He was like, they earned that ticket.
Yes. So it usually is a combination of like coming to the realization that like, hey, like, we probably don't need to write this guy a ticket. And also the realization that like, hey, I don't really want to spend my day off in traffic court.
Yeah.
so
a little bit
like,
of self-serving there.
We're both going to come out with a win on this. And I'm going to be like, hey, man, that thing you did, like, you probably shouldn't do that.
So what happens when you have already charged somebody with something and you regret it?
I make a mental note and don't do that next time.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I think we're forgetting a really important, like, factor in what makes a good cop. And I think it's a good sense of humor. You have to be able to laugh at yourself. You have to.
You ain't gonna last if you don't have that. Yeah. It is, and yes.
Like, when I was doing like the interviews for like we were hiring more jail nurses. We're like, hey, we're doing the peer interview, like whatever questions you want to ask, all that stuff. I would ask the nurses coming in, like, okay, on a scale of 1 to dark, what's your humor? And if they didn't answer dark, I didn't recommend them for that job.
Well, counterpoint.
A little bit cutthroat there, but
counterpoint. If it wasn't dark in the beginning, it will be at the end.
So one girl in particular, she was just like, "Did dark?" And I was just like, "Okay, yeah, dark." And she was just like, "Oh no, I think dark humor is awful." I was like, "You really can't work here then."
Like, we might not get along.
Yeah.
Like you may have a negative opinion of me.
Yeah. But no, like a good sense of humor, because you are going to be disrespected. You're going to be called names. You're going to be like talked down to, like all of these things. Again, you are dealing with people on the worst days of their life. Like they've been caught. Nobody likes getting caught
Not
doing something
always.
wrong.
Sometimes they just like walk up to you and do it. Just because.
Like TikTok dares or something.
I think some people are just like not
This sounds like a story.
I think some
give me
people
the
are
story.
just not very nice. Well, like you standing on a crime scene, and like you can see, like I was standing on this crime scene one time, right? Like a bunch of people got shot. So of course, like the dude is like, "Now's my time to challenge this cop." Like this is the appropriate situation. So, like, and I can see him coming. Like there's a big crowd of people around the tape, and the yellow tape, and that's one of the things from cop shows that's actually real is the yellow tape. So I can see him coming like behind the crowd, and like again, like the way he is carrying himself and moving, like that dude is like trouble.
A huge percentage of communication is nonverbal.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
90-something% of communication is nonverbal.
Yes.
You have to be able to recognize those cues.
So I see him coming, and he comes up, and he may have reached for the tape without saying anything. Or he may have said something like, "I'm going over there," or like, "I need to go over there." And I was like, "Hey man, can't do it. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go around the tape." Like, and yeah. Then he was like, "Fuck you, like, you ain't shit."
Yeah.
And you know, this is a race thing, and I can't remember exactly what he said. It wasn't very intelligent. But like,
Or kind.
he deliberately chose to have that interaction.
Yeah.
Like I was never going to see him probably again in his life.
Yeah.
Like
Some people are just dicks.
He was like, "I'm gonna walk up to that guy and fuck with him," which like again, you can do that.
Yeah,
Like,
if they don't cross,
as long as you stand
a
on
line.
that other side of that yellow tape,
yeah,
you can do that.
yeah,
But like if you come in the yellow tape, like you will not be leaving.
you
tonight.
can't make violent threats, and you cannot make physical contact with you or any of your bodily fluids.
Yes.
So, like, you're gonna, but like the
It's
point
not
being,
illegal to be an asshole.
right? People are going to say things, and you have to develop a humorous response. Otherwise, you're gonna carry that shit, and it's gonna build up as resentment.
Yeah. My response to him, he's like, this is a black and white thing. Like, this is a race thing. I said, "Nah, dog, this is a tape thing."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, the thing is that, yeah, the tape is my issue here.
Absolutely. So, let's hit them again. We said deep understanding of the Constitution, a like solid, like honorable, honest person, and this is in no specific order. This is just like our top ones. Good sense of humor, interpersonal communication skills, and critical thinking skills / common sense.
Common sense and ability to make good decisions under pressure.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like the intangible things
Mm-hmm.
that I think are like, if somebody's got that, like they might be all right.
And then for me, like looking at it from an officer's safety point of view, you have to have an aggressive gene. You have to know when to flip that switch. Like, you have to have it under control, but it has to exist within you.
You have to possess the capacity
Right.
for violence.
You do. And I think that is something, it's like the elephant in the room. People don't want to talk about that being a necessary quality of a police officer. But if you equate like people being willing to get into a fist fight, like had you been in a fist fight before you become a police officer?
Yes.
Okay. How many of your classmates during the police academy had? Was it a significant portion of them, or?
I can't even. So the academy is very much like, at least mine was, like, eyes forward, mouth shut. Like, so, like, that question was asked and hands were raised, but, like, I can't even really tell you because I'm not
Okay.
looking around. So certainly some of them had.
Mm-hmm.
There was in my academy, there was a significant amount of people who had been in the military.
Okay.
So, but yeah, some had, some hadn't.
Because if you look, because when my dad went through and they asked that question, like, not a bunch of people raised their hand at all. And
I'm sure it's less now.
Oh yeah.
Than it was when he became a police officer.
But if you don't possess the ability and have control over it, that is when things happen where you shoot because you're scared, not because it was the right thing. Like, we tell people when they come, like, everybody, when you come here for a class, you have to have something between a harsh word and a gun. And the possessing the ability to be violent means that you have to be able to cover all that stuff.
Yes.
And you have to know what level of violence is required to make it stop.
Absolutely. And people are, like, maybe not the people listening to this podcast, but people in the world would hear us say that, and they'd be pretty upset. But I'll, like, speak to that point is, if you had a young child that was abducted and by someone with nefarious and violent intent, and you were going to, like, hand select the cop that was going to go rescue them, you would pick someone with the capacity for violence.
I want to compare it to something that my dad talked to me about whenever I started having kids. He said parents that don't believe in spanking their kids are often the most abusive if they ever reach that point. He said, I've never whipped you mad. But he whipped us. Anytime, like, there wasn't a countdown. There wasn't a, like, okay, if you do that again, it was like, these are the rules. Adhere to them or don't. If you don't, these are the consequences. And I think that him being capable of enforcing a punishment is translatable to, like, cops that aren't capable are going to go to the most violent thing, which is shooting someone.
That is a possibility that could happen, for sure.
Like, it's, if they get scared and the only tool that they feel comfortable using is a gun, what tool do you think they're going to go to?
Yeah, I agree.
So when we say that they need to possess a capacity for violence, it not only improves officer safety, but civilian safety as well.
And the safety of the bad guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because you, like, having that capacity means that you have it under control.
We certainly need people that are in control of themselves.
Right.
For sure.
So
like the color codes, like
yeah.
people that get to condition black, like this is not a great job for them.
That thought terrifies me. Like that there are police officers in this world who do go there.
Yep.
It's scary for them and their families and the people that they interact with. Like,
well, it's scary for the people that work with them.
Oh,
too.
I'm sure.
So, yeah.
So we've kind of built what we think is the perfect cop. And like I said, I had already recognized a lot of those qualities in the police officers that were in my life. Like, what are some absolute no-nos? Like, we've kind of talked about, like, you have to be this, so it automatically, it takes out people who are dishonest. It takes out people,
cheating, lying.
Yeah, it takes out, like, certain people. But, like, what are like personality or character traits that are, like, absolutely not?
The ends justifies the means type of mentality.
Okay. And that's, like, as long as you don't have that and you do possess all of those good qualities, then that is the kind of cop that I want showing up to my emergency.
Yep. I mean, I think, obviously, we can't have people that lie, cheat, and steal. We can't have people that are biased. And when I say biased, I mean people that are biased about things that are unacceptable to be biased about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, the protected categories, right?
Yeah, race, abilities, sexualities,
yeah,
religion, all of that stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. Like, we should be biased toward, like, people that commit crimes, like, and that's something that is not going to be popular, I'm sure, but that's literally the job, is like, that's who you need to go find. Mm-hmm. So, like, that is,
you have to be able to recognize the body language and the way somebody carries themselves when they are up to no good.
And it's not only that, of course, but I mean, like, if I have, yeah.
Well, it's like, if you take it back to nursing, I need to be able to look at somebody. If I walk into a room and I see somebody, like, clutching their chest, they're sweating, they're clammy to the touch, and then they go unconscious, I have to be able to recognize those signs as, hey, heart attack. You have to be able to recognize signs or symptoms of what somebody's actions are.
Yes. So
and think, hey, crime being committed.
I'm glad you said that, because it let me, like, it allowed my brain to channel where I needed to go. So, for example, somebody that's being dodgy,
Mm-hmm.
like, that is not...
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. No.
Yes. Like, that obviously is not the criteria. I hope people realize that.
No, because that could be fear of, like, authority. That could be, like, they had a bad experience with a cop last week. That could be they're having a bad day. They're, like...
It alone means nothing.
Right.
But I may be able to recognize that and start employing some investigative tools.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say investigative tools, I mean, like, there's a bunch of them, but, like, one of them may be like, hey, man, can I talk to you for a second? Like,
And if they say no?
then it depends on what I have. If all I have is mere suspicion, and they're like, nope, you may not talk to me, I'm like, damn.
That sucks. And I think that, like,
a wise man once said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky.
Another wise man said, don't talk to the police, James Yeager.
Yes.
It is humorous to me. Like, since we've done the build the perfect cop and like what you should expect from the police officers, and like almost a guide to judge them by. Like, those are the qualities of a good cop, and then anything outside of that isn't really like the core qualities.
Yeah, the core qualities are extremely important. So, and there are, of course, like with any human, like some people are going to have strengths and weaknesses. So they may be like really, really, really good at talking to people, but their like common sense is not as good. It's like if it was Madden and we were creating a player, like you only have so many numbers,
Right?
But like
your
you
points.
gotta average somewhere
Yep.
in there.
No, everybody is. I make the joke like, if there is somebody who is not that bright but extremely attractive, like all their points went to the pretty department.
Yes.
So you have a certain number of points, and they have to be spread out across all of those core traits that we just talked about.
Yes. And yep. So it really is difficult for someone to be, and they may be like the best person ever. It's difficult for someone to be successful if they don't have like the survival level of any of those traits. So if they are great under pressure, they have great common sense, but like they can't talk to people, they're gonna struggle being successful because people will not talk to them in interviews, and they're gonna have a hard time gaining voluntary compliance. So they're gonna fight a lot of people.
Right.
That didn't need to be fought.
Right.
If you talk to them in a better way.
I saw that happen at the jail so many times. Like, fresh out of high school officers coming in, not knowing what the hell they were doing. And I'm like, you need to learn how to fucking talk to people. Like, there was an incident where there was a huge fight on one of the pods. And it all started because the officer was in a bad mood and got snarky. Like, somebody didn't get a sandwich. And instead of investigating further, he was like, don't fucking care. Slam the flap in the guy's face.
Yeah, it's not very nice.
And then
you should be nice to people.
So of course the inmates started like throwing towels and doing all the stuff where trying to get more officers to come up there. When the officers wouldn't go up there, like then they started doing things to force the officer's hand to go up there, like flooding the pod, doing stuff like that. And as soon as the officers made entry, a huge brawl broke out. And I was livid because I was doing my med pass with the food pass that night. And I'm like, that is that officer's fault.
Yep.
That officer.
Yep.
And you have to be able to step back and, like I said, thin blue line, like supporting the thin blue line means giving the officer the benefit of the doubt until all the facts are on the table and you can make a legitimate decision from there. It does not mean excusing officers for poor behavior.
Correct.
So, okay, let's end it with the top 3 funniest stories. Like I want to, like, let's not go tragic. Let's go, although they can be a little tragic if it's funny.
So, I'm gonna try and keep them not super long.
Okay.
So, because if I tell like full length versions, like that might be its own podcast. So, so
Are you going to be here tomorrow?
so, we were in a car chase one night, and we got good spikes on it. So we spiked the tires, and he crashed. And where he crashed, like weirdly enough, was like almost right across from the precinct, which is funny. So he crashes, he bails out of the car and is running away from the car. And I think I was the third car or fourth car, something like that. So the first car is canine, and we do that like for a reason. So the canine handler like has the dog with him, and he's like giving the bite command, like, that dude, go snatch him. And as he's doing that, another officer runs by the vehicle. So the dog is like bailing out the window, like, I want to go make Dad proud. And the handler has him by the tail, like trying to keep him from biting this officer on accident. So we get in this chase. So I'm in the train of dudes running after, and it occurs to me, like, hey, somebody should probably look in this vehicle and make sure there's not like more people in here, or like a dude with an AK waiting to shoot us all in the back. So like I clear the vehicle quick, and like there's nobody in there, and I look up, and they're like super far away. Like, for as drunk as this guy was, he was pretty fast.
He can run. So
they're running. It was a Chick-fil-A there, and they're running like toward the far corner, and it's kind of in the middle of a parking lot that is surrounded by like strip malls.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't think I'm going to do anything just following the train. Like, I don't think I'm going to catch up. But there's no way this dude, like, knows where he is. I think he's going to come back to the main road. So I just paralleled him, like, right down the main road. So we get past the Chick-fil-A, and he's continuing the same direction, like, toward the corner where the strip malls are, and there's, like, a driveway to get into the big parking lot. And I'm like, man, I still think he's going to come back toward the main road. So I keep paralleling him. So sure enough, like right when I'm coming to the side of the strip mall, somebody's like on the radio, like, he's coming back toward the main road. I was like, I knew it. So he's coming back towards me, and it occurs to me that if I like tackle this dude, which would be like my go-to, that we're both going to be tangled up on the ground, and like the dog is probably going to eat both of us. And I was like, that doesn't sound like fun to me.
No.
So I have this great idea. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my taser out, because it has a light on it and a laser, and I'm going to point it at the guy, and I'm going to tell him to get on the ground, and he's going to see that, and it's going to be scary, so he'll get on the ground, and then the dog will just get him. He won't get me, right? Brilliant. So
sounds like it.
Yeah. So dude comes around the corner, and I'm like, get on the ground, and he like completely ignores me, and I was like, well, that didn't work. So put the taser back away, and I start like running after the guy, like kind of thinking I might just have to tackle him, and kind of thinking like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. Like, I'm just trying to figure it out. And like as I do that, I see the dog come around the side of the building, and like in my head, I'm like, oh snap, like this is what I didn't want to happen. So I like had an idea. I was like, well, the dog is going to chase the person that's running. Right? Like, even a person is going to like chase a person that's running. Like, that's just instinct.
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm not going to be the one running. So I stopped and stood perfectly still, and like for whatever reason, like I put my arms down by my sides like a tree. Like I don't know why I did that, but that's in my mind. That's what being
camouflage.
Yes, that's what being perfectly still was, right? So the bad guy runs in front of me, like probably as far as like the edge of the table, and I like had it probably took a fraction of a second, but like in my head I was laughing hysterically about how funny it was that my priorities changed so quickly from catching this dude to not
getting bit by a dog.
By the dog. So so he runs past me and I'm like, well, okay, I guess that happened. So the dog is like coming directly for me. And I was like, well, if you make a big deal out of this, like it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
So like just you got to know
take it.
This is going to suck. This is going to hurt. This is going to hurt. This is going to hurt. Just like just wait. And he literally bumped into my leg and then kept running. And then I was like, I can't believe that just worked. That was amazing. I'm the smartest man alive. So he still wasn't quite sure who he was supposed to be biting. So throughout the whole foot pursuit, the reason that it took so long is a dog is jogging next to his handler like, Dad, what are we doing? Like,
yeah,
he didn't get it. So the officer who kind of messed this whole thing up in the beginning, he wound up tackling the dude. I was like, what an idiot. So when he
the
does
dog
that,
get him too?
the dog jumps on the bad guy's back.
Yeah.
So the officer's on his legs. The dog jumps on the bad guy's back, and he's like laying on his back, and he's got one paw on either side of the dude's head, and his head's up like looking around like, Dad, I got him.
Yeah.
Like it was hilarious. And then the dude started to get up off the ground.
Oh no.
Because there's a dog on his back.
Yep.
And he like lifts an elbow, and the dog, boom, like on the top of the skull. So that was yeah. He was not a very nice person either. I had to go to the hospital with him in the ambulance.
Quick dog and criminal story.
Yeah.
From the jail. This dude gets into a car accident, like same deal, DUI, like running from the cops, gets into an accident, takes off into the woods, and he lays down in a ditch with leaves all over the top of him. And when he's sitting there, like, again, I use humor. So I was like, what the fuck happened to you? Like when I walk into booking, like, what the fuck happened to you?
Covered in leaves.
Yeah. He's got stitches on his face at this point. Like he's like messed up.
Yeah.
And so I asked that, and he was like, I don't want to talk about it. I was like, you ran from the police, didn't you? And he was like, shut the fuck up.
He said, I don't want to talk about it.
And I was just like, no, seriously, like, I do need to know what happened. Like, I'm the nurse here, da-da-da. And he was just like, I got bit by a dog, man. And I was like, you got bit by like a police dog? He was like, yeah, I thought I had him too. And like, he starts really getting into it. He's like, I thought I had him too. That motherfucker walked over me 3 different times, never even noticed. And then I sneezed. And like the whole reason this dude in his head, the only reason he was in jail
is because
he sneezed.
Yep.
He's like, fuck a sneeze, man. Fuck a sneeze. Okay.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we got to laugh at it. Like, by the end of the intake, like, he was in a much better place.
Yes, of course.
And that, like, doing stuff like that also helps, like, protect them and the officers around you, like, keeping them in a good headspace. Because when you're happy, you're way less likely to fight.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
So I'll tell another one. This is a real short one.
Okay.
It's also a canine story. So, we got an alarm at this, like, I think it was Hobby Lobby, right? So we get there and the door's unsecured. So we're like, oh well, I guess we actually have to clear this place. So I'm clearing it with this canine officer, and his particular dog, for whatever reason, he actually did this a second time, but like, you know, they give the command like, hey, anybody in here, like, let us know or you're gonna get munched on. And you know, there's nobody in there. So
Right.
But he lets the dog go, and the dog like immediately runs over to like one of the shelves that's like, you know, in the dog region, and grabs a stuffed animal off the shelf and then carries it around with him for the whole search.
Aww. That's adorable.
Yeah.
Like, it would be hilarious if you had caught the dude because he said, "Aww."
Yes, that would be worse than a sneeze.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more like super funnies? Because I want to keep it lighthearted. Like we talked about some heavier stuff at the beginning, like what makes a good police officer. Unfortunately, bad cops do exist, but they're not representative of all of them.
I've been lucky in that, like, I've experienced very, very few. Like, there's people that like make mistakes, but very, very, very few like actual bad officers, and many of them wind up leaving the department.
Well, it's
like,
the whole 10% thing. Like
one way or the other, whether they're forced to, whether they decide to. All right, so I've got the third one.
Let's hear it.
We stopped this car one time, and I think there was like 4 of us. So like 2 cars and 2 dudes in each car. So we stopped this car, and the driver is like not super nice. So I was talking to them, and he was like, I think he said something like, "Man, fucking stop signs are bullshit. Like, you ain't got nothing better to do," like stuff like that. And I said, like, kind of in a sarcastic tone, like, "What, you don't think traffic laws are important, sir?" And he was like, "Nah." And I was like, he was like, he goes, "Nah." He goes, "There's people out there fucking murdering and raping, and you're here with me." And I got the OODA loop thing, so I don't really want to yell on the mic, but I was like, "Where are they? Tell me where they are." And his eyes got huge, and like he had no idea what to say. And I was like, "Tell me where they are." And he's like, it was literally like a huge beat, like dead silence. And he goes, "Man, I ain't no snitch." I said, "So it's your fault. It's your fault there's murdering and raping going on, and I'm here with you because you won't tell me where they are."
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And I gave him his license back, and I was like, "Hey, man, you should just stop at the damn stop sign."
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, so 2
he didn't get a ticket.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Like, and this, one of the questions, one of my final 2 is...
I hope he tells everybody what he said.
I would. I totally would. So did I tell you about when I got pulled over? My first time ever getting a ticket. I was working at the jail, had left to get everybody lunch. They call me from the jail. "Hey, there's a lot of shit going on. We need you back here now." I leave. I don't even have all the food. Like, that's how important it was for me to leave and get back. Leave, pull out into traffic, and traffic, like the speed limit was 45. I had to get up to like 52, 53 to merge with traffic. Well, then I see blue lights behind me. I'm like, "Oh shit, cop going to an emergency." No, I was his emergency. I was speeding. And then I sped up to let him over because I'm still thinking cop going to an emergency.
You,
yeah. So I sped up. I actually got ticketed for the second speed. Like, he clocked me again when I sped up. And he gets out, comes up. He asked me like license, all the stuff. And then, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a nurse at the jail. They really need me back." Da 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 da. He was like, "Okay, just 1 minute while I go write this ticket." I'm like, "The fuck? Like, I just told you." Like
come on, man.
Like, a little bit of professional courtesy. Like, I get it if I wasn't on my way back to work. Like, I wouldn't expect the same thing.
For a real emergency.
Yeah, but I was actually going to take care of people, and they needed me there. And so he brings the ticket back up, and here's like, at that point decided to be officer friendly and was like, so my daughter wants to go to nursing school. Any advice for her? And I was just like, yeah, tell her to ask for the advice before he writes the damn ticket. I've got to go. Like, I was so mad at that point, like just over it. But yeah, so, okay. Did you ever pull any Super Trooper stuff? Because me and one of the girls that I worked with, like one of the officers at the jail, we did an intake, and like, how many meows could we get? Like, did you ever do any of that? Like, have you ever done any of that?
So, I'm gonna say yes. It wasn't anything like super blatant usually. Like,
you boys like Mexico?
like, I think the one that I'm sure that I used was, that'll happen. That will happen.
Okay.
I did use another one. This guy, he was like, we got this call for a domestic, which nobody likes, and I was working midnight, so I was off at 7. It's like 6:40.
Mm-hmm.
So day shift is there. They're just being day shift, so they're not available. So dispatch puts it out once, and me and my midnight squad, we're eating breakfast, like you do, because we're about to leave. So dispatch puts it out once, nothing. Like, they put it out a second time, like, okay, like, we'll go. So we show up. It's not physical. It's just like relationship nonsense. And the dude is moving out. He's like, fuck this bitch, blah, 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 doing all this stuff.
Like
I'm taking everything. All this shit is mine. And like, me and the guy I was there with, like, we're not in the mood for that.
Yeah.
And like, he doesn't have a car. So he's coming out of there with, like,
one of those.
He's coming out of there with, like, lamps and, like, that's my fucking toilet paper. I'm taking the toilet paper. Like, I bought that. Like a TV. Like, I'm like, and I'm trying to reason with him. And I'm like, bro, like, can we not? Like, what are you even gonna do with this? Like, and he's like, nah, man, fuck that bitch. Like, I'm gonna throw it away. I don't give a fuck. And I'm like, all right, like, this is the kind of day we're having. And so I told him, I was like, hey, man, you sure you got everything? Like, straight face. He's like, why? I said, did you get the ice trays? He's like, what? And I'd, like, look at my partner, and I was like, what kind of sick bitch takes the ice trays?
I love it.
Yeah.
That's what you got to add a little bit of fun to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then very last and final question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you had to go back to whatever age you were when you become a cop, would you do it again?
Yeah. But there's something wrong with me. Like, I asked your dad for advice, and his advice was don't be a cop.
Don't be a cop.
Yep. So, and I think now I would give the same advice. There are people like me who, like, won't take it, and, like, those are the people, like, the people you won't talk out of it. Like, they're probably...
That's who you want to be a cop.
Yep. So, I love the work. And have gotten to work with some amazing people. So, like, there are multitudes of downsides. But
that's any job, though.
Yes, for sure. So, I mean, it's a front row ticket to the greatest show on earth. Like, somebody said that was smart, not me. I didn't come up with that. But, like, there's not a lot of jobs they make, like, TV shows and movies about. Like, it's for a reason.
Right.
Like, it's not a TV show or a movie, but, like, the stuff that happens in there.
Cops was like the
does
first
happen.
reality TV.
Well, so the thing with Cops,
Or one of the first. I'm sure
They-
there was other stuff, but
like that is all super legit.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But they film that for like they might film for a month or like more than that to get like 1 30-minute
Oh yeah,
episode.
for sure. Yeah, it's not all the excitement, but it was legitimate events happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, guys, you have learned what our opinion on the build a cop, like build your perfect cop was, and what character traits were needed so that you can help to better differentiate between the 10s, the 80s, the 9s, and the 1s. And then you got a couple of fun stories, and we hope that you enjoyed listening. Please forever and always remember,
Your responsibility to be ready for the fight never ends.